Let's bring into the conversation member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Democrat Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Senator, always good to see you. You've said a couple of days ago it's time for those articles of impeachment to be transmitted to the Senate so you can get the trial underway. What do you believe was the strategy from Nancy Pelosi, and what is she getting out of this ultimately?
Well, listen, I understand Speaker Pelosi's case here. In fact, we're looking at new emails that have been disclosed just overnight by another Freedom of Information request. None of that might have been before the Senate had we rushed to a trial. I do think we're going to get started pretty soon here. I don't think there's going to be any injustice in the amount of time that we've waited for the articles to come over. But I do understand her case. The fact of the matter is we've had some bombshells, including John Bolton's offer to testify before the Senate. And had Mitch McConnell tried to rush through a process in December, perhaps allowed for Republicans to bring a motion to dismiss, then we wouldn't have some really important information before us. So, I think that we are, getting ready to start this trial, but I also understand why she is reticent to send over the articles when there are so many unanswered questions about the process and so much new information coming out.
But as we heard a minute ago, Speaker Pelosi's argument also is that she wants to make sure the arena is fair, that there will be a fair trial in the Senate. But you've already had Mitch McConnell saying now for weeks, I'm not an impartial juror. I am, in fact, coordinating strategy with the White House, and there is no way this president will be convicted in the Senate on these impeachment. So how can you call that a fair trial? In other words, what are the circumstances under which Speaker Pelosi will see an arena worthy of her transmitting those articles?
It's really unfortunate that the Republicans have chosen to apparently open this trial with a completely partisan vote. But I still believe that there are enough Republican senators who are willing to vote with Democrats to make sure that we have a fair trial. And to us, that means requesting documents and witnesses. Of course, there's one bombshell witness that apparently has a story to tell. And I just think it's untenable for Republican senators to look their voters in the eyes and say that they willingly boxed their ears and covered their eyes when John Bolton wanted to talk to them about what he knows about this scandal. So I wish that we were able to get that agreement before the trial begins, but I'm optimistic that we will be able to get enough Republican votes to be able to move forward on those witnesses.
Senator, let's go to the briefing yesterday on the killing of Soleimani and the potential of being on the brink of war with Iran. We've seen all the sound bites. We've heard all the sound bites. But let's get some details from you for people who are watching right now to understand what happened. How long did the briefing last? How many senators were there? Where was the briefing held? Did you get the opportunity to have a good back and forth with the briefers?
So, first of all, it's exceptional that it took 6 days for the administration to come to Congress and explain their rationale for striking a foreign government. And then once they got here, this briefing was held in the basement of the Capitol in a secure facility, a secure room. Once they got here, they were in front of 100 senators, and they walked out after about 75 minutes. They didn't walk out in a huff. I think they were scheduled to only be there for an hour and 15 minutes, but that's not enough time to be able to explain the complicated and nuanced rationale for this strike. There were only about 15 questions that were asked by senators. And frankly, just when the questions started to get tough, they left. Now, the questions were starting to get tough because it was becoming apparent to those of us in the room that there, in fact, was not evidence of an imminent detailed attack against the United States. And without evidence of a specific imminent attack, the administration does not have the authority to strike without Congress. And the temperature was rising in that room because that was slowly becoming apparent to us as we asked more questions.
Can you describe what a tough question would be or was?
No, I probably can't, detail the questions that were asked. All I can say is that, sort of vague notions of plans for attacks against the United States are not enough to strike a foreign power, to execute the second most powerful person in a country without coming to Congress first. And the reason for that is because there are enormous national security consequences to doing that. And we've already seen them. The counter-ISIL mission stopped, United States troops being kicked out of Iraq, the nuclear program in Iran restarting. And so they have an obligation to come to us. And without that information being presented, it just, I think, started to get people very angry that there hadn't been prior notification to Congress.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor, I want to hear what you're looking at with your reporting, especially in terms of what the White House is saying is next with Iran. The president seemed almost physically restrained yesterday as he was delivering his update address.
Well, the president really spent hours and hours with top national security officials at the White House contemplating what to do about this Iran strike. I was told that he was very relieved that there weren't American casualties, but I was also told that because he was really waiting in the Situation Room, thinking through this, that he then settled on this de-escalation policy and this de-escalation stance because he didn't want to escalate any further this Iran nuclear strikes. That being said, he did settle on having new sanctions. And I was on the Hill yesterday talking to Democrats. They say that that's still something that shows that there's going to possibly be an escalation of this. The other thing to note is that there are Iranian officials now saying that this is just the beginning of this, and that there are a lot of smart Iranian experts that say Iran really does take its time to seek revenge and that this could just be the beginning of this. So we saw a different side of President Trump saying that he wanted peace and saying that this was something that he wanted, that he had thought about very carefully. But I think this is not something that's done all the way yet. And if I could, to put a question to the Senator Murphy, I'm really interested in this idea that Senate Democrats are breaking with Nancy Pelosi when it comes to this issue of sending over the impeachment articles. Do you at all worry, or are you concerned that Senate Democrats breaking with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi undermines Democrats' ability to push for a fair trial and that it plays into the hands of Mitch McConnell?
Well, I don't think we're breaking with Speaker Pelosi. I've said that I completely understand her reasons for holding the articles, and I think that there's been some really important information that's come out. And I don't think there's really any disagreement. Speaker Pelosi hasn't said that she's going to hold the articles indefinitely. She has said that she wants to be assured of a fair process. And so we're going to start this trial. We're going to start it without any injustice being done to the constitutional requirement of impeachment. And, ultimately, this is going to be a decision by Republicans. All Democrats have made it clear that we want to have a fair trial. We want to actually try to find out the facts. And so in the end, if we don't, if they try to whitewash this, if they try to cover up what the president has done, it's only Republicans that are going to have to answer for that.
Senator Jonathan Lemire here. Among the speculation about the timing of this strike, there's been some by some 2020 candidates, Senator Warren among them, thinking the president struck now because to distract from impeachment. And certainly there has been an argument that the administration has not presented the immediacy of this threat. So my two questions for you. First, on that, do you think this strike had to happen now? And then second, just big picture. After what happened, is the United States safer today than it was before the president killed the Iranian general?
The United States is absolutely not safer today than before the strike on Thursday. And let me just outline again what has happened in just 1 week. In just 1 week, Iran has taken all the constraints off their nuclear program. They can speed towards a nuclear weapon faster than a week ago. Our troops are in danger of being kicked out of Iraq, and that means that ISIS will grow stronger. The Iranian people have gotten behind their government just weeks after they were protesting their government. Similarly, in Iraq, those people have been turned against the United States. Those are a cataclysmic series of consequences to U.S. national security, and they all happened in just a week. What we also know is that this strike didn't actually restore deterrence. That's what a lot of Republicans are saying. Well, we convinced the Iranians that there was consequences for their action. Well, I'm very glad, grateful that no Americans were killed. But the Department of Defense has stated that Iran was trying to kill Americans in that attack. They just failed. And so the strike didn't actually deter Iran, and the Supreme Leader is on the record saying that he doesn't believe that the consequences are over. So it doesn't appear that this strike succeeded. The United States is less secure, and Iran is more powerful today. And again, I'll just say it again. There was no evidence in that briefing that this attack that Iran was planning was imminent or certain. And without that evidence, anything that you're contemplating of this kind of size and scope can't be done without getting the approval of the American people.
Senator Murphy, it's Casey Hunt. To turn back to looking ahead to impeachment and picking up on what John Lemire was saying in terms of them being linked together, I'm wondering what your sense is on any sort of realistic possibility that there could be twists and turns in this trial that are not predictable because people are actually willing to cross party lines. I wonder if Nancy Pelosi is holding this a little bit longer, in part because of what's gone on with Iran. But I also wonder if there is a real belief that if you guys hold a vote to say, call John Bolton, you may see Republican senators act unpredictably or side with you. I mean, do you think there is a realistic chance of that?
So I do think there's a realistic chance of that. And it's because ultimately Republican senators, many of them are up for re-election, are answerable to their constituents. And, you may think, well, are regular voters out there really plugged into the process of impeachment? I think they are. I mean, I think there are a lot of folks out there who actually may be supporters of President Trump, but actually want to make sure that the Senate conducts a trial that honors the constitutional responsibility. And so I think there's a really good chance that there may be a handful of Republicans, especially those that are up for re-election in 2020, that are going to support us on the process. Now, they may vote to acquit the president in the end, but I think they know that it'll be harder for them to explain to their voters an acquittal vote if they have also voted repeatedly to try to bury witnesses and documents. And that's the thing. There are going to be votes. There are going to be votes to produce documents. There are going to be votes to subpoena John Bolton. And so Republicans are going to have to go on the record, and that's going to be really uncomfortable for a handful of their members.
All right, Senator Chris Murphy, thank you very much for coming on the show. Always good to have you.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.